I went on to tell Phyllis about the uneventful drive, my previous apartment in Sono, the flooded basement, my general wayward ways since getting out of school, and also about John and John's parents. She listened intently up until I started in about my work at EdTech. She wasn't interested. Can't blame her, though. I could tell she wanted to hear more about being spontaneous and making adventurous, unplanned moves. She wanted to hear about cravings and lusts and bouts with mild madness, all of which I've had, but few of which I generally share with strangers like Phyllis. And then you met Carol, Phyllis interjected when I'd mentioned EdTech for the second time. She leaned forward in her large leather chair, listening narrowly for clues. Right, and then I met you and Carol, and now I'm here. Just then, as if cued by the stage manager, the screen door in the kitchen opened up with a squeaking stretch of its thin metal spring. Philly, you in there? Carol called into the house. We're in here, Carol, Phyllis called back to her. Get yourself a beer and come to the living room. The screen door clapped shut. Carol crossed the kitchen. Phyllis sat back in her chair, held her beer in her lap this time, and smiled zanily. She seemed to be especially happy Carol was joining us, as though maybe Carol's presence might inevitably bring answers that her probing questions hadn't uncovered. Add the appropriate catalyst, then watch the unstable elements react. I felt easy around Carol, but Phyllis was too unpredictable. Dinner would be more difficult to navigate than I expected. I had planned to be charming and clever and distant, but now I would have to be careful. The hostess was a little too nosy to deserve relaxed, unguarded company. One would have to keep their head. This little play of Phyllis's would not be the thing wherein she would catch me in anything. Not if I could prevent it. Carol sat on the love seat and Phyllis got up to put the fish in the oven. Carol asked me how I liked Phyllis's new living room, and I told her it was very hip. Carol smiled at me and then thought of something she had to tell Phyllis. She raised her head to call to Phyllis in the kitchen, but stopped and waited. Phyllis was making noise with the oven rack, so Carol hesitated. In a minute, Phyllis was back in the living room with a set of oven mitts in her hands, smiling aggressively. Carol then told her she had run into Antonio. The name Antonio meant nothing to her. It was someone, probably a mutual friend, who Carol must have run into earlier in the week. Phyllis said nothing. Instead of responding, she turned and tossed her oven mitts into the kitchen. Mike was just telling me how he came to the Big Sleazy. It's a great story. Oh yeah? Carol said. Carol then looked over. Fill me in. What did I miss? Not much, I wanted to assure him. Hey, is there another beer in the fridge? I had no interest in becoming designated storyteller for the night. Sure, answered Phyllis. 1 second. She slipped back into the kitchen. Several topics of conversation averted in a matter of seconds. Thanks to you, Michael, Carol began happily. I can take a day off tomorrow. Glad to help. I enjoyed it. Here you go, Mike, said Phyllis, holding out a beer. Phyllis, where are we eating? Carol wondered out loud. Should we set the table? Sure, we'll eat in the kitchen. Carol stood up and followed Phyllis into the kitchen. I knew from the sounds that one of them had pulled open the silverware drawer and the other a stack of plates out of a cabinet. I stayed put in the living room and relaxed. The sanding and painting had been tired. I sat there and enjoyed the new leather furniture. Phyllis and Carol talked with each other for 5 or 10 minutes before calling me in to join them. When they did, I stood up and poked around a bit. I went to the doorway leading to the front of the house and looked in. The next room was a large bedroom with a comparably large attached bathroom. Through the door on the other side was a short hallway and a narrow carpeted staircase coming down. I took the tour. Down the hall farther was a small front room with 2 matching windows looking out to the Orleans Neutral, and a front door in between them that looked not used. Room to room, the decor was eclectic, each different from the others, as though Phyllis had distinct ideas about how every space in the house should be maximized to its natural psychic positioning and purpose. The kitchen utilitarian, the living room warm, elegant, and brooding, the bedroom white and surprisingly lacy, and the front room plain like a study with wood floors and an unfinished wood desk opposite the windows. Unoriginal or smartly appropriate, the answer was in the balance, as it is most of the time. Phyllis was equal parts obsessive, compulsive, and scatterbrained. The inside and outside together confirmed it, and I understood the method. If I had more furniture and knickknacks and other accumulated belongings, someone could no doubt accuse me of similar inconsistency. "Hey, Michael, what are you doing up there?" called Phyllis. "You're not going through my underwear drawer, are you?" A ludicrous thing to say, but maybe I should have expected. I took a last look around and stepped backward out of the front room and through the house to the kitchen, where I offered to lend a hand. No, answered Phyllis. "You sit down." She pointed to the dry side of the kitchen table with her chin, so I pulled a chair out and sat. In a minute, I was done with my second beer and stood up to get another. Carol read my mood. She stepped sideways to cut me off and reached in for 2 bottles of beer for the 2 of us. She took them to the counter to open them, then handed me one. She held her own bottle out at an angle for a toast. She toasted our good teamwork. We clinked bottles, and I returned to my assigned seat away from the cooking area. Carol put her beer down and began setting the table. Phyllis checked the fish. Casually, Carol moved to the open drawer by the dishwasher and took out silver. Phyllis talked out loud to herself about the redfish, and Carol asked Phyllis questions she didn't listen to. "When did you buy the silverware set?" asked Carol. "Does this side look done?" Phyllis asked back. "What happened to your old set with the white plastic handles?" "I say it's done. Well, almost. Placemats. We need placemats," said Carol decisively. "Phyllis." "What?" "Placemats. Where do you keep them?" Carol turned to the table and placed 2 handfuls of knives, forks, and spoons on the table. I looked closely at the knife pile to see how it was different from the set with the white handles, all stainless steel. My eyes fell to the spoons and the forks and then back to the knives again. Something was strange, not quite correct. Phyllis and Carol chit-chatted as I strained to figure it out. The number. 4. 4 spoons, 4 knives, 4 forks. 4? I must have blurted out. Why 4? The beers were kicking in. How many of us were there? Phyllis, Carol, me, 1, 2, 3. Phyllis looked over to Carol and then to the table and then back to Carol. "Where is he?" asked Phyllis. "Is he coming, do you think?" "Who? Where's who?" I asked the 2 of them. I wasn't trying to raise my voice, but Phyllis looked at me like I had. It wasn't my place to be making a lot of noise about who was or wasn't coming to dinner. "Oh, just Antonio," answered Carol. "He had to go meet someone for a beer, but he said he'll be over afterwards." "A beer? What does that mean?" Phyllis asked Carol. "He's probably on his way. He heard redfish and his eyes lit up." "When was the last time a beer meant just one?" Phyllis asked Carol again, still standing over the counter working on the fish. She'd cut up a lemon and was squeezing wedges over the hot baking pan. "Tony's a good boy about that these days," started Carol. "Really, you have to hand it to him. He hardly..." Her voice trailed off. "Antonio. Tony. Antonio. One and the same. the guy, the neighbor, the classic car collector, the prick. Who was he and why was he coming? Who was this Tony to assume he could come to dinner with us without being invited? Questions all ran together. Why had Carol been talking to him so intently out in front of the house before? And now, what exactly about? The front doorbell rang and Phyllis and Carol looked at each other. Carol with furrowed brows and Phyllis with raised brows, both questioning. Who would use their front door? Phyllis threw the deep-juiced lemon wedges into the garbage and wiped her hands on the checkered dish towel. She pointed Carol to the drawer in the corner for placemats and left the room. 2 seconds later, a figure swung into view at the open back door. Tony. And Tony.